Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a new series. New series, which I call Thematic Transformation in blank, or work blank. Well, today, work blank is the Brahms First Symphony. And with this series, what I'd like to do, what I propose to do, is to delve a little more deeply into some of these works and show you just some of the ways that the composer uses his thematic material, transforming it from one emotional state or mood to another. And it's really, really cool. And sometimes you don't notice this at all, or it takes a long time of getting to know these works before you start to realize these connections. You feel them. You feel them the first time you hear them. You know them because you hear them all. And composers are incredibly nice to us. They're not trying to be tricky. What they're trying to do is use the material. I mean, they come upon a theme or a motive or an idea, and they think, gee, this is really good. And I don't want to let it go, because in order to write a piece in large forms, like a symphony or a concerto or something, you need to create coherence. And one of the ways you create coherence is by basing large stretches of music on the same thing, but not always played the same way. In other words, it evolves, it develops, it changes while still remaining unified. That's the essence of symphonic construction, and it's the essence of really all music in large scale. If you just have one idea, then another, then another, then another, then another, you wind up with this little daisy chain, a little string of pearls. It might be a lovely string of pearls, but it's going to be a boring string of pearls, because the longer it goes, the duller it gets, and the more lost you become in this quagmire of miscellaneous thoughts. So there has to be organization. And one of the best ways to do that is to transform themes, sometimes in ways you would never expect. Brahms is particularly good at this, I might say. I mean, his generation of composers was quite good at it, actually. And we're going to begin with his first symphony because it has some amazing examples of different kinds of thematic transformation. I'm not trying to be exhaustive. These are not analyses of the whole works. These are just examples of a composer using material in a fascinating and emotionally and expressively powerful way. And I hope that you will propose things to talk about that you've noticed along your way, thematic transformations that struck you as particularly powerful and interesting. And we're going to make this a series, hopefully, if you like it, and we'll see where it goes. So we're going to start right away with the first movement of the Brahms First. And the example from the first movement is the relationship between the big, long introduction with the pounding timpani, boom, boom, boom. Start this. Oh my God, it's amazing. And the main allegro to follow. Now, we happen to know, actually, that Brahms wrote the introduction later, after completing the movement. Originally, it was just going to begin with a bump, bump, like that. But then he said, it's a little abrupt. I think I need to do something. So he added an introduction, and the introduction foretells or foreshadows many of the ideas to come. And his idea in this introduction was to take the main thematic material, which is etched in a highlighter. It's very, very clear when you first hear it, and mysteriousify it. Make it sound sort of vaguer and less clean and clear and obvious. And so he does that in a bunch of ways. He does it by rescoring it, by changing the dynamics, by alternating woodwinds and strings in ways that you don't hear when it finally appears. And so when it finally does show up, you have this vague sense of having heard it before. And of course, the tempo is completely different, slow tempo versus fast tempo. But you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. And the cool thing about this introduction, the way Brahms does it, is that he actually takes a big chunk of what's going to be the first movement and redoes it almost exactly the way it's going to later appear. It's not just a tiny little motive or a little theme. It's a whole big paragraph of music that he's introductified to make it sound mysterious and foreboding of what's to come. And it's really wonderful. So this performance features Gerard Schwartz of the Seattle Symphony. It's part of that wonderful Schwartz edition. Here we have it. Oh, here it is on Naxos. This is a very good Brahms cycle, by the way. It really is. So let's have a listen to the bit of the introduction. Listen particularly to the woodwind theme, the falling da, 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 just 4 notes. It's easy to hear. It gets stuck in your brain right away. Here it is. And now let's hear what happens to it when it shows up in the first movement. That whole big section that we just heard reappears, and it's in a different guise. All of a sudden it's become urgent and angry and thrustful, just the opposite of what it was in the introduction. Isn't it? And you can hear right away it's the same music. See, the brilliance of this, of what a composer does in writing music like this, is that they understand that the thematic material has potential. And I'm sure, Brahms sat down at the piano and sort of toyed with it and played with it. What happens if I play it slow? What happens if I, give it to the oboe or the flute, or what happens if I do this or change the harmonies underneath a bit? I mean, it's not 100% identical, obviously, but it is close enough so that you know exactly what the material is, and you recognize it when it returns. And that's like totally awesomely cool. The second example that we're going to deal with is the opening theme of the lovely, bucolic, pastoral third movement. Oh, it's so beautiful. Here's that theme. You just, I'm sure you know it if you know this symphony at all. It's just lovely. Short, sweet, gorgeous. However, even that beautiful little theme shows an astonishing amount of compositional craft, because you may have noticed that theme has 2 phrases. Ya da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Right? 2 phrases. One goes down, one goes up. Well, it just so happens that the one that goes up is an exact inversion of the one that goes down. In other words, all Brahms did to create this melody is play the first half, then turn it upside down and repeat it. Isn't that cool? I mean, and you wind up with a beautiful, well-balanced, shapely melody. It's in kind of mirror form, because it's an inversion is simply the same thing played upside down, with all of its intervals reversed. And so so you wind up where you started at the end of that melody, and it's just you don't even think about it. But even here, Brahms is thinking about it. He wants his music to have coherence. He wants everything to relate in some way. And, of course, there are contrasting ideas that don't relate to anything. I'm not saying that every note in this thing belongs to something else, and you should agonize when you're listening to it going, well, what was that? And that was, no, don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. The relationships, like I said, are generally speaking very clear once you recognize them. I mean, Brahms isn't trying to hide anything. He's not trying to be, sneaky, I'm smarter than you. That's not the point. The point is direct expression, but direct expression that has a feeling of unity to it. So I'm going to replay that. I stuck a little half-second pause between the two halves of the melody just so you can hear the inversion a little better. Here it is. Wasn't that fun? Now, inversions are very popular among composers. They really are, because they're a very useful way to extend your thematic material to get more bang from your buck. Not all of them work as well as that one. The big inversion guy, frankly, is Bruckner. Bruckner inverted everything. I mean, everything he did comes back upside down and then right side up, and usually with the right side down and right side up and upside down versions played simultaneously so you can hear them. So, it's a very, very popular technique. Brahms uses it with aplomb, and nowhere more beautifully than there, because it's just an exquisite melody. But even that little melody shows a real care for how it's built. So that's the third movement. Now, the fourth movement, this is our last big example from this particular symphony. I don't want these talks to be crazy long. Just a few examples from each work I think will suffice. So you may know that the finale of this symphony also begins with a big, dark introduction like the first movement did. Now, unlike the first movement, this one was written from the front forward, more or less. I mean, as far as we know, Brahms covered his tracks very well and destroyed sketches and things like that. But you get a sense that the introduction was written first because the rest of the movement quotes from it extensively and in the same way as it appears in the introduction. In other words, when you hear this stuff coming back, it's referring to its first appearance in the introduction. Whereas in the first movement, it was just the opposite. Brahms was trying to cover up what we heard in the introduction. So that sort of indicates that the ideas in the introduction had to exist in their final form before the finale happened in order for them to be quoted later. So just so you know. Anyway, one of those ideas is an Alp horn theme that Brahms theoretically heard on a trip in Switzerland. Ya da 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 ba da da. Well, was that horrible? Ya da da da. Ya da da. There we go. That's my Alp horn voice. So yeah, that's the Alp horn theme. And then it comes back in a close canon that is repeated. Ya da 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 ya da 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 later on, which we're going to hear. So don't worry. Here it is. You're not going to have to just deal with me. Oh, it's so lovely. It's noble. It's just a glorious sort of thing, isn't it? Well, that theme comes back as the climax of this big finale's development section. And it's a transformation that is so different that you may not at first recognize it. And Brahms, like I said, he's very nice to us. He plays the transformed version and then follows it immediately with the original so that you may hear that the original is actually the same thing. It's the same thing being played twice, just in a different form. This angry, really angry gesture becomes, it's as if it's a rebuke. The original returns as if to say, no, 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 no. We are not that person. We are this person. It's a wonderful moment. And I have to be honest with you, I never heard it first 400 times I listened to the symphony. I mean, you listen to musical moment, one moment at a time as it comes, in the order it gets presented. You may hear these things, you may not. But the fact that it clicked when I read an analysis of the symphony, Tovey's actually, I finally went, oh, wow, yeah, that's what that is. Because he showed me. And so sometimes you need to be shown. It's okay. It's perfectly fine. You're not supposed to get everything the first time through or the 100th time through. Let me play you the passage. I'm just going to shut up and let the music explain itself. An angry transformation of that Alphorn theme followed by its original form. It's a wonderful dichotomy and expressive point that Brahms is making. Here it is. Isn't that amazing? I mean, da da dum ba da dum ba da dum ba da dum. Well, that's da da dum ba da da dum ba da dum ba da dum. Right? It's the same music. The same music is a totally different expressive character, and that's what great thematic transformation accomplishes. Brahms working with the same material to create an enormously coherent and functioning entity, but at the same time, I mean, there's no lack of emotional range or dynamic range or range in color and timbre, but it's all based on the same idea. And that idea has different faces, different characters as the music goes on and they interact. And the result is, of course, a huge screaming masterpiece that we all adore. Not bad, huh? So I hope this little chat has given you a wider sense of what's going on in this symphony and what composers do to create wonderful, large forms that feel inevitable and organic and powerful and satisfying. So I'm looking forward to doing this series with other composers and other works. Oh, it's going to be fun. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.